Big news. The Almanac is officially back. The most exhaustive and comprehensive guide to the 2023-24 college basketball season is available for pre-order now. If you go to cbbalmanac.com, link is in the description below, you can pre-order for just $15.99 or 20% off the sticker price. The format is going to be a little bit different this season. Instead of an 850-page PDF, you'll be getting access to the full site with league-by-league PDFs available for download. The preview will be live on September 20th, so you have until then to be able to get your pre-orders in. So for insight for all 362 Division I teams, from their head coaches and the experts that cover them, make sure you hit that link.
It is the Field of 68's off-season grades. I'm Greg Waddell, and I am joined today by the incomparable Rob Doster, and we're going to talk about a program, Rob, you got to see up front and close, up front and personal, whatever the phrase is last year. You went there, the Texas Longhorns. And from what I heard, you and your cohorts at the Field of 68 were blown away by the trip. Well, Rob, it was an explosive season last year that ultimately turned out pretty good for the Longhorns, and they have a big chance to build on it. But there are a lot of new faces and a lot of guys making their way out as well. Gone, Marcus Carr, Timmy Allen, Sir-Jabari Rice, holder of the best pump fake in college basketball, Christian Bishop. Arterio Morris has headed to Kansas, and Rowan Brumbaugh, Jeff Goodman's favorite, coming back. Dillon Mitchell, Dylan Dessou, Brock Cunningham, Tyrese Hunter. And as far as newcomers go, there are some big names from the portal here. Kadin Shedrick, Max Abmas. Remember that guy? I remember that guy. Chris Johnson, number 45 in ESPN's Top 100. Ithiel Horton from UCF. Chendall Weaver from UT Arlington are in as well. Rob, lots of new faces, along with many other teams in the country, but there's a lot of talent on paper for this Longhorns group. Do you like what they've done this offseason?
I do. I think that they salvaged what could have been a really, really bad offseason. What was not listed there in terms of the comings and goings was that they had a commitment from Ron Holland, who ended up reopening his recruitment and going to the G League Ignite program, where he is projected as a top 3 pick in this year's NBA draft, as well as AJ Johnson, a guy that was committed to the program, a top 25 player, borderline 5-star recruit who is going the professional route as well. He is headed to Australia to play in their NBL Next Stars program. So for a while, it looked a little bit dicey, right? For a while, it looked like Rodney Terry, after signing his long-term contract, after agreeing to a deal that was going to make him be the actual head coach instead of just the interim head coach at the University of Texas, it didn't look like he was going to be able to have much. There was a point in time we were like, are they going to be able to fill a roster here? And he kind of salvaged it, right? Getting Abmas was the big one. Getting Dillon Mitchell back was probably the next biggest one. Bringing in Kadin Shedrick is really going to help. Keeping Dylan Dessou healthy is going to be something that matters. But overall, I think that you can kind of pencil in a really good starting lineup, a couple of nice pieces off the bench, and then as long as some of these transfers, specifically Weaver and the Onyema kid coming in from UTEP, as long as they're good enough to do a job as like the 8th, 9th, 10th men, and maybe one of these freshmen figures things out, like I think you have a pretty good team here, one that on paper should be good enough to be able to keep Texas in the top half of the Big 12.
I think I agree with most of what you just said here. I might be a little rosier on Texas than you are, which is rare when we do these videos. I feel like that's only happened about once out of 20 times. But when I think of Texas basketball, really over the last decade, I feel like most Texas teams to me they've had talent, but they've been pretty deep, almost to the point where sometimes I get the sense that they're too deep, if you could say that. Like, they just have a lot of moving parts, a lot of guys that think they need minutes, a lot of guys that do need minutes, but maybe not necessarily the clearest roles that you would like. Like, that's last year's team to me had a bunch of dudes, a bunch of good players, but they didn't really have anyone emerge that was like single-handed. Like, I didn't know who their alpha was. One night it was Marcus Carr. Early in the season, it was Tyrese Hunter. Then he really sort of stepped back. Timmy Allen down the stretch of the season was often the guy. But I almost look at this year's roster on paper and feel like there's a little more clarity by necessity here. Like the backcourt of Abmas and Hunter, I don't know that there's a more talented backcourt in the country than this. They've got a hit. I don't love the fit together, but I'm still holding my Tyrese Hunter stock, Rob. And maybe I'm wrong for doing that, but I like his fit next to Abmas a lot more than I liked it next to Marcus Carr.
Yeah, I mean that's probably fair because they're different players, right? Whereas Carr and Hunter were kind of like the same mold, they had different strengths. But my concern here is, well, it's twofold, and this kind of gets into the X Factor conversation a little bit. But one is Max Abmas was awesome in the Summit League. The Summit League is known as a conference where everybody tries to score 95 points. Nobody really plays any defense. And you can get away with being a 5'9", 175-pound point guard without much of an issue. Now you're going into a conference that is known as one of the most physical, one of the most athletic, one of the toughest, one of the best defensive leagues that you're going to find in college basketball, probably ever. Right? When you consider all of the teams in this conference, who, by the way, are also bringing in Houston. I don't know if you've heard of them, Greg. They're pretty good at basketball. So you combine that with the fact that there isn't like an overloaded amount of shooting, right? Tyrese Hunter is probably the best. If you consider the starting lineup of Abmas, Hunter, Dillon Mitchell, Dylan Disu, and Kadin Shedrick, Hunter's probably the best perimeter shooter out of that group that's not Abmas. So you're not looking at a ton of floor spacing when you have Mitchell and Shedrick, who both kind of want to do things in the same spot, right? Like they're both going to do most of their damage in and around the basket, catching lobs, being a vertical threat. So I like it in theory. I don't know necessarily how it is all going to come together and work in actuality, right? Like it seems good on paper to have those 5 players playing together. I'm a little bit more concerned with how it's going to actually work when you have to go out there and say, okay, this is what we're going to run. This is where we're going to create these sets. This is how we're going to get open shots. This is where the space is going to come from. This is how we prevent 5 guys from sitting in the lane and just climbing up into Max Abmas and getting as physical as possible with them. So I'm a little bit worried about that aspect of it. But when you consider the fact that like there was a point in time where the roster was, Brock Cunningham and Tyrese Hunter, and you were just kind of like, yeah, well, what are they going to do here? I think that we're in a pretty good situation. If they're a preseason top 25 team to me.
Okay. Yeah, I am a little higher than him. I would put him like 15-10. I think I think there's a chance Horton can answer the shooting question, right? I mean, he's a big attempts guy. He's 6.6 last year at UCF, but he has multiple seasons. Every year that he's played college basketball, 4 different seasons, 3 different programs, he's shot over 5 attempts from 3. Every single season, he shot 35% or better. Like, to me, you know what you're getting there. Obviously, it's a faster, more physical league, but to me, he's a guy that is absolutely going to be able to space the floor. The question is just, do you want him on the floor for 25 to 30 minutes, or is that more of like a 15-minute role where the starting group you play with doesn't have that?
That's the biggest thing to me, is that if he's on the floor, somebody else isn't on the court, right? Same thing with Brock Cunningham. Brock Cunningham can really shoot it, right? But he's kind of one of these standstill, veteran, glue guy, connective tissue kind of players. And if he's on the court, I mean, maybe Dillon Mitchell's not out there. Maybe Dylan Disu's not out there. Maybe you're playing Mitchell at the small ball 5 and Kadin Shedrick's not out there. So I'm always a little bit concerned about teams where you need to have players that are not your best 5 on the court to be able to have the most influential offense or something that necessarily works. So there's going to be a little bit of mixing and matching. And look, if Rodney Terry is going to earn that $15 million contract that he signed, you got to figure out a way to make it work. Like they go 7 deep, maybe 8 deep, maybe 9 deep. There's enough talent there, but you're going to have to find a way to get creative, because on paper, it's not going to be the easy. Like, there's teams when you look at them, Greg, where you say, okay, this is how it's going to work. This guy's going to do this. This guy's going to stand over here. This dude's going to make this shot. They're going to run this offense, and it's going to work. We know it's going to work. There's teams like that on the defensive end of the floor. You can say the same thing. Trying to figure out exactly what Texas is going to do, like, it's not simple, right? There's a lot of questions that need to be answered.
Yeah, that's fair. I still think it could be more simple than we think. And I think the answer is probably just one of Disu or Mitchell is not on the court together with Shedrick and the other one. My bet would be their best lineup ends up being Mitchell at the 4, Shedrick at the 5, Shooter at the 3, and the two guards, Hunter and Abmas. I love that lineup. I think it makes a lot of sense on paper. Obviously, you don't want to bench Disu for long, but it's something that could work, especially in crunch time games. What are your expectations for this group? We mentioned how good the Big 12 is. They have many people's number one team in the country, Hunter Dickinson and Kansas. They also have Houston. They have Baylor, as we know, and a bunch of other good teams. Jerome Tang is going nowhere. Can this group compete for a Big 12 title, or what should the expectation be in year two under Rodney Terry?
I don't think anybody that isn't Kansas or Houston is going to be competing for a Big 12 title this season. I spoke with Kelvin Sampson earlier this summer, and he had one of the best ways to kind of wrap your head around what the Big 12 is going to be. It's a conference where one team wins most of the time, and that team happens to be the preseason number one team in America. So saying that you need Texas to compete for a Big 12 title is just something that is unfair and unlikely. I would say that they have enough on paper to be able to be a top five team. Now, I think the biggest, I mentioned the X factor being how Max Abmas adjusts. I think the biggest swing player, swing skill, swing dude, whatever it is, if Dillon Mitchell ends up being a guy that can live up to his like top five player in the country hype coming into college, then it completely changes what the ceiling for this team can be. You know, one thing, we have John Henson on this on our network, right? Mitchell played for John Henson's AAU team when he was like 14, 15, 16 years old, something like that back in Tampa. And like Henson raves about him. Henson's like, you haven't seen what this kid can do. You haven't seen what he can be offensively. Once he gets a little bit of confidence, once he kind of figures out like where he's allowed to be aggressive and how it fits within the framework of an offense, you're going to see something out of this kid. Well, we kind of need to see it, right? Like this is a year for you to actually be able to figure that out and find out what he is as a player. And if he ends up being a 12-point, 6-board, couple steals, couple blocks, couple of assists, someone that impacts the game just for being as athletic as he is, and also can kind of do something in a half-court setting, then I think you're talking about like, yes, they can maybe push Baylor for that number 3 spot in the league. If not, then I think finishing top half of the Big 12 with an above 500 record in the conference would be a good result for them this season.
Yeah, I think the only expectation that should matter to Texas fans, in my opinion, this season is solidifying the Rodney Terry decision. Like have a season that is successful enough that is a non-question mark season. Like there's never a moment this season where you're wondering if Texas is a tournament team, right? Whether that's just, okay, they're in and out of the top 25, whether that's they're established as a top 20 team from start to finish, something like that, to me is what they need. I think it's very attainable. And honestly, I think they do it. That would be my prediction on paper. I'm buying some Texas stock. Your Mitchell questions are a good segue into X Factor. He is my X Factor, Rob. I think the most valuable commodity in college basketball is sophomore pros who, for whatever reason, either it didn't work out to go to the NBA in 1 year or whatever, like just they want to come back. There's tons of reasons. Dillon Mitchell's back. He's an NBA talent. We know that. We don't know what that's going to look like in college still. It wasn't what everybody hoped it could have been in year one, but this team needs more from him. He's going to have opportunity to do more this season. And I think you see flashes of all of that. I think there's a very clear world where he is the best player on this team from the moment he steps on a court this season. And it could totally swing things for the Longhorns. He's my X factor.
If he is the clear best player on Texas this season, then I think Texas is a very clear top 10, top 15 kind of a team this year. Let me ask you this. So we know what Max Abmas's numbers were the last couple of years playing for Oral Roberts. What do you think he's going to put up this year? Like if you had to set over-unders on the points and assists that he would average, and I gave you 13.5 points, 4.5 assists, are you taking over on those? Are you taking under on those? Where do you stand?
You said you got it 15.5 is the number for points?
13.5 points, 4.5 assists.
God, you set those lines so well. I'll take the under on assists in optimistic hope that Tyrese Hunter is the playmaker for this team. I think Abmas would be best served in that role. I think it's going to benefit him much that he doesn't have to do all of that for this team and can focus on hunting shots. I'll take the over on points barely. I think he'll end up 14, 15 more than he would end up 11, 12, but probably not much higher than that. I mean, the competition jump is real, right? We know that. But again, if Hunter is what I think Hunter can be, I think it allows Abmas to be the best version of himself. If Hunter struggles at times like he did last year, then I think Abmas feels the side effects of that and gets in a little over his head.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you there. I think it'll be a little bit higher on assists, just because I think that they're going to put a little bit more emphasis on being a playmaker than just being a scorer. Because I just look, when you're 5'9", it's going to be very, very hard for you to be 5'9" and score a lot of points in the Big 12. I will say
Marquise Noel just did it.
Yeah, and Marquise Noel is special. And what I was going to say is that if he that's what you have to hope for if you're Texas, right? Like if you want to compete, if you want to be like a Final Four kind of a team, if you want to be able to make the Elite Eight again, if you think you can be a top 10 caliber team, like you kind of need, I don't want to say Max Abmas and Dillon Mitchell need to be Marquise Noel and Keontae Johnson because they were both All-Americans, but like you kind of need like the JV version of that, right? Like you need them both to be in the conversation for all Big 12 kind of guys. And I'm not convinced that could happen. I do think that there is a world where it does happen. So, which is why I'm perfectly fine with Texas being a preseason top 25 team. I'd probably have them right around like 2022, something like that, somewhere in that area.
Over under 0.5 of those two players, Max Abmas and Dillon Mitchell, are first team all Big 12 honorees.
I'm gonna go under just because there's like I think there's 4 guys that are probably I don't I'm gonna go under just because I mean you're safer betting under on all of that kind of stuff, but
okay,
I would not be surprised to see them both in the conversation. You're taking the over.
I'm taking the over. One of the two will. If I had to pick, I'm going to pick a Dillon Mitchell breakout year. I think there's a huge jump there, but I could easily see Abmas too. Wow, am I talking myself into Texas? I didn't expect that when we clicked record, but here we are. All right, give them an official letter grade. If you give them a better grade after all of this than I do, I'm just going to quit this entire series. What's your grade for Texas?
No, so I'm going to give them a B-, right? Like I think that they were trending towards an F for a while, right? You lose commitments from 2 5-star guys. It looks like Dillon Mitchell's going to go pro. You don't know who you're bringing in. It looks bad. Like as you're heading into April, I remember getting texts from Texas fans that I'm friends with that were like, "Are you sure? Like you've been campaigning to get RT this job. Are you sure? Like this is the dude? Like do we really want this guy? Like what the hell is going on over here?" And then it kind of settled down and yes, they lost Ron Holland and AJ Johnson, but like Max Abmas is going to be really good. I think Dillon Mitchell and Ron Holland are kind of like the same impact player, like sophomore year Dillon Mitchell, freshman year Ron Holland. I don't think are all that different. And I think getting Tyrese Hunter back makes up for the fact that you're not going to have AJ Johnson there. I also think it's always more valuable to have an upperclassman than have a freshman in those spots. And you got Kadin Shedrick, you got a couple other guys. I'll give it a solid B-, and I don't think that. It's about as run of the mill as you can get.
Okay. I'm going to go A-, which might sound a little crazy to Texas fans. I look, you lose Ron Holland, that stinks, right? If he was in tow with everything else they added, I think that's an A+ offseason. I just love this portal class so much. Like I think Abmas is a blue chip portal guy. I think Shedrick is a 5-star portal guy. I like Horton. I think he can play. I see the makings of a team just in what they brought in, and you add to it a guy like Tyrese Hunter, who I'm not selling any stock on whatsoever. I see the makings of a really, really good team and a good season. So I'm rooting for you, Rodney Terry. Don't let me down. And anyways, Texas fans, thanks for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this. I feel like Texas fans, this might be the first one where fans of the team are actually lower on their offseason than we are. That'll be a fascinating dynamic to watch it play out. But if you want to watch the rest of our series on the offseason grades here at the Field of 68, you can do so on our YouTube channel. Jump in the comments, throw us a like and a subscribe while you're over there. For Rob Doster, my name is Greg Waddell. We'll see you next time.
Our partner for today's episode is Athletic Greens. I started taking AG1 during the college basketball season, and I loved the impact that it had on my energy levels. I'm a big coffee in the morning guy, but by the time that the afternoon would hit, I needed another boost. AG1 helped me tremendously, especially on those days when I didn't want to get up off the couch and go hit the gym. Their tagline is AG1 is comprehensive health and the power of habit in one. And man, that could not be more true. It's nearly impossible to eat and drink in a healthy manner in the month of February and the month of March when you are in my business. And AG1 was exactly the supplement that I needed to improve my gut health and cover my nutritional basis for the day. I've continued that into April. I've continued that into May, and I'm going to continue that the rest of the summer. All I have to do is mix a scoop of AG1 with some water or maybe add it into a smoothie, and I'm ready to go. Do it after lunch, and you'll be ready to go for the rest of the day. If a comprehensive solution is what you need from your supplement routine, then Athletic Greens is giving you a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. Go to athleticgreens.com/field68. That's field 68 FIELD, the number 6, the number 8, and you can get yours now. So check it out and help support this show. Thanks.